In 1941, while Britain was fighting for its very survival against Nazi Germany, a strange and desperate conflict erupted on a forgotten front. Out in the scorching deserts of Iraq, British soldiers found themselves in a firefight, not with the Germans or Italians, but with the Iraqi army, an army being equipped, encouraged, and aided by Hitler's Third Reich. So how on earth did this happen? How did a nation that was technically a British ally, a country whose very borders were drawn by British hands, turn to their mortal enemy for help? This isn't a simple story of good guys and bad guys. It's a tangled, bitter tale of imperial ambition, fierce nationalism, and high-stakes geopolitical gambles. This is how the story of Britain's own empire pushed Iraq straight towards Hitler. Section 1. The Scars of Creation. To get why 1941 exploded, we need to rewind to the end of the First World War. The old Ottoman Empire, the sick man of Europe, was finally carved up by the winners. From three of its old provinces, Basra, Baghdad, and Mosul, the British stitched up a brand new state, and they called it Iraq. It was like forcing three families who had never met to suddenly live in the same house. A patchwork of different ethnic and religious groups like Sunni, Shia, and Kurds, who had no real history of ruling themselves together. Now, they suddenly found themselves united under one flag. In 1920, the League of Nations made Britain's control official, granting it a mandate for Iraq. London's job was supposedly to build a modern self-governing state, a sacred trust to help guide Iraqis towards independence. But right from the start, this trust felt a lot more like colonialism, with a new coat of paint. That same year, a massive revolt erupted against the British, a crystal clear sign that the people were not interested in foreign domain. To calm things down without the massive cost of direct rule, Britain went for indirect control. They just needed a local face for their authority. Their pick was Fadl ibn Asim, a Hassanite prince who had just been kicked out of Syria by the French. In 1921, after a heavily managed plebiscite returned a supposed 96% vote in his favor, Faisal was crowned the king of Iraq. But his throne was built on sand. The real power was held by the British High Commissioner, with a swarm of British advisors acting like puppeteers, pulling the strings in every single ministry. Britain's main goals weren't about building a democracy. They were about securing Iraq's massive newly discovered oil reserves and protecting the imperial flight path to India. Then, in 1930, right before guaranteeing Iraq its supposed independence, Britain locked in its power was the Anglo Iraqi Treaty. The treaty gave Iraq formal sovereignty, and in 1932 it became the first Arab state to join the League of Nations. But the fine print was like a chain on a dog's leash. Britain kept the right to maintain military bases at Habayina and Basra, and could move its troops across the country in wartime. To many Iraqis, this wasn't independence at all. It was a cage, where the king was the puppet and their resources were served to a foreign power. A deep, simmering resentment started to boil in the country, a powerful anti-British current that would soon take over the nation's politics. Now we move on to Section 2, Iraqi Resentment. In the 1930s, Iraq was in pure turmoil. The Great Depression had hammered the economy, and the political scene was a mess. The government in Baghdad was a revolving door of weak, short-lived cabinets, often put in place or torn down by British embassies. This chaos created a powerful vacuum, and into that vacuum stepped one group that had all guns, the Iraqi army. The army's officer corps, many of them educated, young, and insanely nationalistic, watched all of this with growing disgust. They saw the politicians and the monarchy as corrupt sellouts to British interest. To them, the promise of independence had been a total sham. This anger was only supercharged by what Britain was doing elsewhere. The brutal crushing of the 1936 to 1939 Arab revolt in Palestine sent shockwaves across the Arab world, cementing Britain's image as an impressive colonial power. The leader of that revolt, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, fled to Baghdad, becoming a celebrity symbol of anti-British resistance. This toxic mix of economic pain, political weakness, and raw anti-colonial anger was a powder keg waiting for a spark. In 1936, the army made its first move, launching a coup that set a dangerous new precedent. For the rest of the decade, military force, not elections, became the final say in Iraqi politics. The political face of this movement was a man named Rashid Ali al-Gaylani. A charismatic and popular politician, Rashid Ali had been prime minister before and was famous for his hardline anti-British stance. He became a popular civilian partner to the Golden Square military power, sharing their dream of an Iraqi free from London's control. Together, they were a powerful new force in Iraqi politics. They wanted to completely change the country's direction. Their ideology wasn't really about fascism, it was about the aggressive Arab nationalism. While some of them were no doubt impressed by the apparent power of regimes like Nazi Germany and Italy, their main drive wasn't a love for Nazism. It was a white-hotted hatred for British imperialism. For them, the coming storm of World War II wasn't a threat. It was a perfect storm, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to break their chains while their jailers were distracted. When World War II kicked off in 1939, the pro-British government in Baghdad, under Prime Minister Nouri al-Said, cut diplomatic ties with Germany. But just below the surface, public and military opinion was shifting. Germany's shocking early victories in the fall of Poland and the conquest of France made Britain look weak for the first time in a generation. To Iraqi nationals, Britain's moment of danger was Iraq's moment of opportunity. The old saying, "The enemy of my enemy is a friend," suddenly looked like a very smart strategy. The Axis powers were more than happy to fan these flames. Germany and Italy launched major propaganda campaigns across the Middle East, portraying themselves as liberators who would help the Arabs overthrow the British and French rule. The Italian embassy in Baghdad, which Iraq had refused to close, became a hotbed for Axis spies and secret deals. Through these back channels, the nationalists led by Rashid Ali and the Golden Square started getting promises of recognition, money, and most importantly, military aid to help them fight the British. A secret treaty was even drafted promising Germany and Italy special access to Iraqi oil if they helped get rid of the hated Anglo Iraqi Treaty. For Rashid Ali and the Golden Square, a deal with Hitler wasn't the ultimate goal. It was simply a tool of convenient lever to get what they really wanted, the total and complete independence of Iraq. By early 1941, things were at a breaking point. The regent Abba al-Allah, who ruled for the young King Faisal II, was fiercely pro-British. He and the Golden Square were like two trains speeding towards each other on the same track. The regent, sensing the danger, fired Rashid Ali as prime minister in January. It was a huge mistake. It not only hardened the nationalist resolve and convinced them that it was time to stop talking and start acting. On the night of April 1st, 1941, troops loyal to the Golden Square quietly fanned out across Baghdad. They seized telephone centers, government buildings, and radio stations. It was a swift, bloodless, and perfect executed coup. The regent, Abu Allah found out just in time to flee, reportedly disguised as a woman, and eventually made it to safety with the British. Rashid Ali was immediately brought back as prime minister, heading a new national defense government. He and the Golden Square were now in charge. One of their first moves was to contact the Axis powers. They formally asked for military help to fight off the British response they knew was coming. They truly believed that with good German and Italian air power, they could finally kick the British out of Iraq for good. Britain, already fighting for its life in Europe and North Africa, was caught completely off guard and by surprise. The idea of a pro-Axis government sitting in Iraq's vital oil fields, a strategic gas station for the entire empire, and potentially linking up with the Axis in North Africa and Vichy-controlled Syria was a nightmare. Prime Minister Winston Churchill knew that they had to act and act fast. Despite how stretched their forces were, the decision was made. Iraq had to be brought to a heel by force if necessary. The stage was now set for a short, brutal conflict known as the Anglo Iraqi War. The new government in Baghdad immediately started testing Britain's resolve. Rashid Ali demanded that Britain stop moving any more troops into the country, directly challenging the 1930 treaty. When the British ignored him, he kept landing Indian reinforcements at Basra. The Iraqis made their move. On April 30th, a large Iraqi force with infantry, artillery, and armored cars surrounded and laid siege to a RAF in Habina, a huge British airbase 50 miles west of Baghdad. The base was mostly a flight training school. Defending it was like sending a high school driving class to fight a biker gang. A collection of obsolete training planes like Hawker Odyssey's and Airspeed Oxfords, flown by a mix of instructors and students. The Iraqi commanders on the high ground overlooking the base were sure the British were trapped and would surrender any minute. They seriously underestimated the Royal Air Force. On the morning of May the 2nd, after an ultimatum to the Iraqis ran out, the aircraft at Habina, planes that were never meant for combat, took to the skies. They flew sortie after sortie, bombing and strafing the Iraqi positions. The pure audacity of the attack stunned the Iraqi army. For 5 brutal days, a small garrison at Habina held off a much larger force. Meanwhile, the British threw together a relief column from Palestine and Transjordan, called Hab Force. As it raced across the desert, Hitler finally issued Führer Directive No. 30, authorizing the support for Iraq. But the promised Axis aid was like a leaky bucket trying to put out a forest fire. Too little, too late. A handful of German Messerschmitts and Heinkel bombs, plus some Italian Fiat biplanes, were flown to Mosul through Vichy France, controlled Syria. They were quickly painted with Iraqi markings, but there just weren't enough of them to make a difference. British intelligence knew that they were coming. The RAF bombers quickly started hitting the Syrian airfields where the Axis were using. The British ground troops linked up with the Habina garrison and went on the attack, capturing the key town of Fallujah after a tough fight. News that Fallujah had fallen, along with rumors of massive British reinforcements on the way, caused a wave of panic in the Iraqi command. The Iraqi army, which had a very little real desire to fight a long war for its new leaders, started to fall apart. By the end of May, it was over. Rashid Ali, the Golden Square colonels, and their German and Italian advisors fled the country into Iran. On May 31st, just 30 days after the siege of Habina began, an armistice was signed. British forces rolled into Baghdad, and the pro-British regent was put back into power. The nationalist gambled and had completely failed. Thank you guys for watching today's video. Please like and subscribe and turn on notifications, and comment if you found something interesting.